Okay, I'm not sure how well this will go. I've just finished reading Moby Dick, as it's such a classic, and it's long-winded in places, where he's describing the specifics of like whaling ships and the techniques they use and facts about whales. So it was a massive project of his. But I'm more interested in like the characterization and the spiritual message within the book, I think. So I really like the beginning, the first chapter, where he kind of explains Ishmael, as we know, the famous first line, "Call me Ishmael." He explains why he goes on this whaling ship. And he mentions this like 3 or 4 years, so it's a massive undertaking, a massive adventure for a young person. So me as a traveler, I can definitely see the attraction, but it's very interesting to see how he describes it. So let me pick out some lines in this first chapter called Loomings and discuss what he's talking about. So let's see. Strong lines here. Whenever I find myself growing grim about the mouth, whenever it is damp, drizzly November in my soul, whenever I find myself involuntarily pausing before coffin warehouses and bringing up the rear of every funeral I meet, especially whenever my hypos gets such an upper hand of me that it requires a strong moral principle to prevent me from deliberately stepping into the street and methodically knocking people's hats off, then I count it high time to get to sea as soon as I can. So we see here the mentioning of death and the fact that we must confront that, and then kind of madness here, I guess, when he talks about the desire to like knock people's hats off in the street. Okay, so whenever he's getting depressed, having to confront mortality and madness, then it's time to go on an adventure. So I love that, and I can relate to that. I think I haven't been on an adventure for quite some time, but I suppose my whole life is. I'm struggling with my own battles here, in a foreign country. It's more of a long adventure, I guess, and a grueling one. So I also get inspiration from reading Moby Dick for that reason also. If they but knew it, almost all men, in their degree, some time or other, cherish very nearly the same feelings towards the ocean with me. Well, I guess, yeah, it's quite kind of universal that a lot of us want to kind of go out there, see what we're made of, face a challenge. I think moving on, I'm really interested in how he describes the job he will do, because Ishmael takes a fairly basic kind of sailor's job on the boat, nothing fancy, and it's very interesting why he makes this decision. And to some extent, he says it's not really his own decision. A part of this book talks about fate. How much is his real kind of free will, and how much is kind of driven by fate or by the gods or by whatever things stir in our hearts. This is also true for Ahab, Captain Ahab. There's a great part near the end of the book where Captain Ahab says his defiance is his worship of God, and it's kind of relating to this idea of him being pushed in the way he goes by unseen forces and inspirations, perhaps more like the Greek gods and the Greek humors. Anyway, and he talks about how he goes to sea, but not as a passenger. This is the important point, and then he explains why he doesn't go as a passenger. So let's read a bit of that. Now, when I say that I am in the habit of going to sea, whenever I begin to grow hazy about the eyes, and begin to be overconscious of my lungs. I do not mean to have it inferred that I ever go to sea as a passenger. For to go as a passenger, you must needs have a purse, and a purse is but a rag unless you have something in it. It's kind of humorous here, but yeah, he's not a wealthy man, so needs must. If he wants to go to sea, he's got to work. Besides, passengers get seasick, grow quarrelsome, don't sleep of nights, do not enjoy themselves much as a general thing. No, I never go as a passenger, nor though I am something of a salt, do I ever go to sea as a commodore, or as a captain or a cook. I abandon the glory and distinction of such offices to those who like them. For my part, I abominate all honourable, respectable toils, trials, and tribulations of every kind whatsoever. It is quite as much as I can do to take care of myself, without taking care of ships, barks, brigs, schooners, and whatnot. I can really relate to this. I mean, we struggle on and we do good jobs in our lives, but, sometimes I think we must all feel, I certainly feel, it's hard enough just staying alive and doing the basics we have to do. Life is a struggle, and why take on massive responsibility with high positions and fancy titles? I feel that. And he continues, and as for going as cook, though I confess there is considerable glory in that, a cook being a sort of officer on shipboard, yet somehow I never fancied broiling fowls, though once broiled, judiciously buttered and judgmatically salted and peppered, there is no one who will speak more respectfully, nor to say reverentially of a broiled fowl than I will. Okay, let's skip past a bit, but he's explaining more needs must. I mean, he's not a wealthy guy, so he needs to make ends meet, and he doesn't care for fancy titles and fancy jobs. And so, let's see what he explains. He does. No, when I go to sea, I go as a simple sailor, right before the mast, plumb down into the forecastle, aloft there to the royal masthead. True, they rather order me about some and make me jump from spar to spar, like a grasshopper in a May meadow. And at first this sort of thing is unpleasant enough. It touches one's sense of honour, particularly if you come of an old established family in the land, the Van Rensselaers or Randolphs or Hardecanuts, or more than all, if just previous to putting your hand into the tar pot, you have been lording it as a country schoolmaster, making the tallest boys stand in awe of you. The transition is a keen one, I assure you, from a schoolmaster to a sailor, and requires a strong decoction of Seneca and the Stoics to enable you to grin and bear it. Yes, well, he's taking on this job which requires some stoicism, some, knuckling down and getting on with things, with no real position. So there's something deeper than position, prestige, status. There's something meaningful about just getting a job done. And, when I was a Christian, I would say, living for God's glory, doing things solely for that. Your life as kind of as worship. As a non-Christian and a non-religious person, but still with something of a kind of spiritual heart. I still kind of feel that, maybe more in a mystical way. And then this I think is beautiful, because he talks about kind of how we all somebody's slave. It reminds me of Dylan's song, You Gotta Serve Somebody. I mean, his is a Christian song. It may be the devil or it may be the Lord, but you've got to serve somebody. But even as a non-religious person, I think we're all serving somebody. So let's read this. It says, What does that indignity amount to, weighed, I mean, in the scales of the New Testament? Do you think the Archangel Gabriel thinks anything the less of me because I promptly and respectfully obey that old hunks in that particular instance? Who ain't a slave? Tell me that. Well then, however the old sea captains may order me about, however they may thump and punch me about, I have the satisfaction of knowing that it is all right, that everybody else is one way or other served in much the same way, either in a physical or metaphysical point of view, that is, and so the universal thump is passed around, and all hands should rub each other's shoulder blades and be content. Well, I think that's true. I mean, we are all, if not physically, slaves. I know that's extreme language and a bit over the top, especially for people who really were slaves in the historical sense. But certainly metaphysically, as he says, we are all slaves. If at least if you're like me and believe there's some kind of cause and effect in this world, and it's hard to logically believe in absolute free will, for sure. So again, I always go to sea as a sailor because they make a point of paying me for my trouble, whereas they never pay passengers a single penny that I ever heard of. On the contrary, passengers themselves must pay, and there is all the difference in the world between paying and being paid. The act of paying is perhaps the most uncomfortable infliction that the two orchard thieves entailed upon us. Well, these two thieves, Adam and Eve, and I guess, yeah, the first sin, which from a mythological point of view threw us out of the Garden of Eden. And since that time, according to the myth, God said that we would toil and sweat to make ends meet. Yes. But being paid, what will compare with it? The urbane activity with which a man receives money is really marvellous, considering that we so earnestly believe money to be the root of all earthly ills, and that on no account can a moneyed man enter heaven. Ah, how cheerfully we consign ourselves to perdition. So, yeah, he's rejecting money, he's rejecting position, and he's going there for an escape, I guess, from the troubles of life, but also it's giving him some kind of purpose and meaning. Let's finish with this further point he makes. Finally, I always go to sea as a sailor because of the wholesome exercise and pure air of the forecastle deck. Okay, well, it's healthy. It's a healthy lifestyle, apart from the risk of death, of course. It's pretty dangerous. Let's see here. I like this here when he comes back to the idea of fate and his decision to go on the whaling ship. And he says, and doubtless my going on this whaling voyage formed part of the grand program of Providence that was drawn up a long time ago. In other words, it's predestined. It came in as a sort of brief interlude and solo between more extensive performances. In other words, it may not be one of the big events of history, but it's equally predestined. I take it that this part of the bill must have run something like this. Okay, and then he has a list. I don't know if you can see the list in the middle there. But the first thing on the bill of performance: grand contested election for the presidency of the United States. Second performance, whaling voyage by one Ishmael. Third performance, bloody battle in Afghanistan. Well, yes, quite. At least for us, our little kind of trivial lives are as big as anything because they are everything for us. So humorous and meaningful too. There is a final reason he gives for going on the whaling ship, and that is Let me quote, "Chief among these motives was the overwhelming idea of the great whale himself. Such a portentous and mysterious monster roused all my curiosity. Then the wild and distant seas where he rolled his island bulk, the unbelievable nameless perils of the whale. These, with all the attending marvels of 1,000 Patagonian sights and sounds, helped to sway me to my wish. With other men, perhaps such things would not have been inducements, but as for me, I am tormented with an everlasting itch for things remote." And I feel that. Many of us feel that. I guess it's a very human feeling. "I love to sail forbidden seas and land on barbarous coasts. Not ignoring what is good, I am quick to perceive a horror, and could still be social with it. Would they let me, since it is but well to be on friendly terms with all the inmates of the place one lodges in. Anyway, by reason of these things, then, the whaling voyage was welcome. The great floodgates of the wonder world swung open, and in the wild conceits that swayed me to my purpose, two and two there floated into my inmost soul endless processions of the whale, and midmost of them all, one grand hooded phantom, like a snow hill in the air." And here is the vision of the great white whale, like a snow hill in the air. So it's so passionate and grand in language, almost feels like you're reading the Bible, and so deep, and deals with metaphysical subjects about our existence, about finding meaning, about accepting our fate and making the best of it. A fairly poor man, fairly young I think, heads off on an adventure knowing that it's going to be grueling and difficult, but he will see wonders, go to remote places, and see this amazing creature, the whale, which also, if we went into it, could be a metaphor for other deeper spiritual things. Anyway, these are just my thoughts on the first chapter. I'm not going to go through every chapter of this book, but I've just finished the book and I wanted to go back to this and think about some of the things here and go over some of that language again. So thanks for listening.